One of the more anticipated movies of 2024 was the film Civil War. In a politically polarized country, there was a lot of speculation going around from political pundits and film critics as to how this movie would unfold. However, as the storyline emerged that Texas and California had aligned, it became clear the movie was shying away from tackling any of the tough political questions of our day. Civil War has some strengths, but also many weaknesses. In general, the movie feels like more of a biopic on the trials and tribulations of war photographers, rather than a second American Civil War. The storyline of this film is not hard to follow. Several war photographers are headed to DC to cover what looks like the final battle in this Civil War. Two of them are going to interview the president. In the movie, Texas and California are known as the Western states, and their military forces are closing in, preparing to attack. So there's a primary storyline around the photographers, but then a secondary storyline around the Civil War, and that's a big flaw in the movie in my opinion. The viewer is left with many questions around this second storyline being the Civil War. For example, why exactly are Texas and California fighting together? What prompted them to succeed? How were secessionists able to overpower the most powerful military in the world? They don't appear to have a navy, and other than helicopters, don't have much of an air force. These are all questions I think the writers thought they could just ignore, but the audience deserves some sort of explanation, some sort of background on the war. In my opinion, this movie shouldn't even be called Civil War, but something else, as the Civil War wasn't really the storyline here, and that's a huge flaw. It's really not a movie about a second Civil War in the United States. It's a movie about war photographers. Now, the movie briefly mentions the economic effects of the war when they stop at the gas station. We see Lee Miller offers the attendants $300 in Canadian money, not US dollars. This seems to imply that hyperinflation has occurred and the US dollar has become essentially worthless. And this was a good call to put in this dialogue here, so I will give them a little credit showing how money, what becomes of money during these times. Now, I do think it would become more of a barter economy. Things like gold and silver, food, water, those things would become very important, not just Canadian dollars. Now, one other scene in the film that I have to point out I don't like is when the photographers went into a town and seemingly everything was normal and they're just shocked. The group is stunned that life is like normal. Now, Wagner Moura, who plays Joel, one of the photographers, goes into the store and even asked if they're aware a civil war was going on. He kind of sarcastically asked it. And the woman responds by saying they're just trying to stay out of it. And this is supposed to be some sort of shocking revelation. But the writers really dropped the ball here. Throughout history, there's countless examples of towns living normal lives, people living normally, even though a war is occurring. Now, just last year in 2023, we saw bars and people's partying in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine actually, and there's many other examples of this. And the fact is, many people just continue living their normal lives, even if there is a war going on, as long as it's not right on top of them. Now, I must say that the film captures the challenges of being a war photographer well. We see how these individuals head into these dangerous war zones, risking their lives. One of the things the movie does a really good job of is showing the photographers have to be immune to the violence. They have to be immune to the suffering, regardless of their feelings. They cannot get involved or they cannot help either side. There's some other positive things in the movie too. One is the cinematography in the battle scenes. These are well done for the most part, and there wasn't any cheesy CGI really used. I mean, I'm sure there was some in the film, but it wasn't obvious. Also, I have to point out that this wasn't some big budget film. They were most likely working on a medium-sized budget since this movie came from A24. I thought the acting was good in the movie across the board. Still, one gap, though, comes to around the characters or photographers the movie doesn't really explain why they do what they do. There has to be something driving these people to pick this extremely dangerous career. One weakness also in the movie is Sammy, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson. Now, while Henderson is a fine actor, great character actor, I think he was not the right pick for this role. The fact is, Henderson is just too big and fat to play the role. It's not really believable for a war photographer to be so obese like he is. The movie also follows this relationship between Lee Miller and a young aspiring photographer named Jesse Collin. Jesse tags along with the group, and we see how during the movie Lee teaches her the ropes. Jesse learns things like the importance of ignoring the violence and death and just trying to get that perfect photo. Jesse struggles with this at first, but we see toward the end of the movie she had grown and essentially became immune to the violence. In one of the final scenes, she takes a big risk heading out in the open, and Lee saves her life. As Lee is getting shot, Jesse snaps a photo of Lee in the White House, and it really highlights just once again how these individuals must remain indifferent to death. In general, they could have done this movie about war photographers in a different setting. Why not just have Russia or China invading the US? To me, it seems like a weak cash grab, calling this movie Civil War, trying to essentially market it, draw attention. And it's really a film less about division and civil war in the United States and more about the hardships of being a war photographer. It's still a movie I think worth checking out, but just don't expect to see the right and left fighting it out.